Good day, everyone. I warmly welcome you to the second part of our lecture on psychological theories of learning. In today's class, we're going to examine the theories of Robert Gagne and that of Jean Piaget, theories of learning. In the Jean Piaget theories of learning, we examine the sensory motor stage, the pre-operational stage of learning, and we're also going to talk about the concrete operational stage, the formal operational stage. These stages of learning, according to Jean Piaget, will be examined. What they imply? What is the implication to teaching and learning of science in our classrooms? And of course, what impact do they have on curriculum development and teaching and learning in general? So these are some of the matters we're going to be treating in today's class. It is my hope that you are going to get the best of this class. Do the needful. Get your pen, your writing materials, and let's meet on a learning platform. Let's meet there. You are welcome to the second part of our class on psychological learning theories and their application. I remain your facilitator, Amusa Uluwadamilare. Like we have said in the first part, these are some of the faces of the prominent psychologists that are making waves in the area of educational psychology. So these are some of them: David Hosubel, Jerome Brunner, Jean Piaget, Robert Gagne. And of course, the question we are still answering remains the same. What are learning theories? We have treated it in our last class. Learning theories are well-established statements of fact, principles, guidelines, and so on. They describe how different individuals assimilate new knowledge, concepts, and skills towards effecting a behavioral change. Of course, this is like a revision. And the general questions are the same. How do students thinking expand to include new ones? How are concepts formed in the human mind? Can the concepts in science be handed over entirely as ready-made, or must the learner build them up for himself, step by step? And what are the science concepts we hope to encourage our students to develop? These are some of the general questions. They remain the same. Aims and objectives. Now, in talking about Robert Gagne and Jean Piaget, our aims and objectives will be describe Robert Gagne's theory of learning and discuss the implication of Robert Gagne's theory of learning to science teaching, and describe Jean Piaget's theory of learning, and also discuss the implication of Jean Piaget's theories of learning to science teaching and curriculum development. Let's start with Robert Gagne's theory of learning. Robert Gagne's theory of learning is often referred to as Gagne's theories of learning hierarchy. Gagne's theory of learning hierarchy. The theory states that the learning of a new concept or skill depends upon the mastery of prerequisite concept. Let's say that again. The theory states that the learning of a new concept or skill depends upon the mastery of prerequisite concept. It also says that the first theory implies that prior, or what we call previous knowledge, determines what further learning may take place, and that materials meant for learning must be sequentially structured by science teachers. So that is what the first statement connotes. Now let's look at the implication. 1. Content in science subjects should be arranged in hierarchical order so that those simpler concepts are mastered first before the more complex ones. So as science teachers in the classroom, you don't take the difficult concepts and introduce them to the student. You start with those simple ones that will attract them. They perceive the simpler nature of science
and they are attracted towards it. But if you start from the other side, then you are not implementing the Robert Gann's theory of learning. Secondly, science teachers should carefully state the objective for learning any topics in science subjects. So the concept of objective writing is very critical in the theory of learning according to Robert Gann. Learning tasks sequentially so that the learning of one science topic should aid the learning of the next higher topic. And that is why in curriculum, sometimes we do have what we call spiral curriculum, where the smaller concepts, the simpler concepts will be treated before the difficult ones are introduced. Further application says that the content should be arranged hierarchically so that simpler content are treated first and lower class before the complex ones at higher classes. And lastly, the teacher should administer diagnostic pretest in order to find out the point where the learning hierarchy can start. So these are some of the implications of Robert Gann series of learning. The concept of pretest is not new, it's been there. So as teachers in the science classroom, we should endeavor to conduct preliminary tests for our students to know where actually we can start from. Of course, this concept is useful in research, experimental research studies. We have pre-test and we also have post-test. So now let's move on to Jean Piaget. Jean Piaget theory of learning. And it's called Jean Piaget theory of learning, intellectual development stages. Piaget pioneered the studies of cognitive, or we call it mental development. He emphasized that learning ability corresponds to the level of intellectual development, that is cognitive development of the child. And he proposed 4 human intellectual development stages. That's what we call it, theory of intellectual development stages. And the first stage is between age 0 to 2 years. It's called sensory motor stage. It is called sensory motor stage. And the second stage is pre-operational stage, which is between the age 2 to 7 years. Pre-operational stage. The third stage is concrete operational stage, and that is between 7 to 11 years. And the last stage, which is formal operational stage, it is between the age of 11 and 15 years. So these are the intellectual development stages according to Jean Piaget. Now let's take that of sensory motor stage. This is a pre-verbal stage before the child to talk. Learning activities at this stage consist mainly of sensory and motor activities like seeing, sucking, tasting, touching, and pushing. So before, when you say pre-verbal stage, before the child begins to talk, so these are the characteristics of the child. The child learns that objects are permanent and go out of existence when they can no longer be seen. So that is the interpretation the child will give at that stage. The child experiences during that period, the basis for later knowledge. Their experience at that time form their basis for later knowledge. So that is just about our sensory motor stage. And by the end of the period, certain aspects of the child behavior can be called intelligent. So that is on sensory motor stage. Let's go on to pre-operational stage. It says that the term operation is a way of thinking that follows a definite pattern. Of course, this age is between 2 to 7 years. 2 to 7 years. It is a subconscious act of thinking which is prerequisite to logical reasoning. So the child becomes kind of conscious of some things around him, and the child may be able to speak clearly, engage in drawing, writing, reading, and perform complex physical manipulations. Perform some other task like it is known to all of us. He is perceptually oriented and cannot reason logically or see contradictions. So they have a limitation too at that stage. Logical reasoning, they cannot see contradictions and at that age. So that's according to Jean Piaget's second stage called pre-operational stage. Now let's have this activity. What are the child's attributes at pre-operational stage? And like you have said, the child may be able to speak clearly, use symbolic representation by drawing, writing, reading, and perform complex physical manipulations. He is perceptually oriented and cannot reason logically or see contradiction. He develops the ideas of volume, length, and number. He easily confuses the physical change of an object with the change in quantity of the object. He uses language, that is what? By talking, questioning, listening, and experimenting. Talking of self or object is part of the characteristics of this stage. So if you are asked what are the attributes of pre-operational stage, this prefer the best response. Now let's go to the third stage, which is concrete operational stage. The child's mental process is limited to thinking about things. He is limited by the nature of the problem he sees. Problems involving concrete objects that can be observed and manipulated can be solved. So they can deal with concrete object very well. They can manipulate it. They cannot cope with problems where a hypothetical situation is considered. Beyond simple extensions, extrapolation or interpolation. So this levels becomes higher for that age. Solutions are achieved mainly by trial and error. A child at this stage also develop the ideas of conservation of matter, length, weight, volume, and concept of time and space. So when it comes to issue of higher order thinking, they are unable to cope at that level. At the last stage, another stage, yes, in continuation of the concrete operational stage, the child can perform logical operation with concrete objects, can also carry out some logical processes like observing, describing, classifying, and measuring real objects. It is a period of exploration for the child. The study of science in primary school should begin with the art of observation, which involves the use of the basic senses of seeing, smelling, hearing, touching, and tasting. Greater emphasis should be placed on doing than talking. The children should be engaged in scientific-based activities. They should be taken above, lecture method of teaching, sit down and listen. They should engage more in activity. Use of models, that is specimen, real object, apparatus is better at this stage because the child depends on facts and not theories. Yes, this is the last stage in the Jean Piaget series of learning. It is called formal operational stage. It is between age 11 to 50 years. Now at this stage, there is accumulation of experiences and development of mental structures from previous stages. And also, it is characterized by freedom from reality, which provides a starting point for thinking. Of course, the child will begin to think, and the child develops abstract thinking. It can follow logical argument, complex relationships of mathematics and science, and the hypothetical deductive nature of reasoning can be understood. The child can make deductions, comparison, and inferences from ideas. It can solve logical problems and can relate symbols with concepts. Furthermore, it is important that teachers should promote exploration and interaction with environment using locally available materials. And that is at this stage. Still under formal operational stage, learners should deal with concrete materials before going to the complex ones. Later, they will learn abstract concepts and generalization. Science concepts should be taught from simple to complex. Science teachers should present new ideas and knowledge at the level consistent with the child's present state of development in thinking and language. Science teacher should focus on problem solving rather than rote memorization during teaching and learning process. Now let's have this activity, Robert Gagne and Jean Piaget theory of learning. Using appropriate examples, make a brief presentation on the practical relevance of Robert Gagne and Jean Piaget theories of learning in physics classroom. So this is activity for you. Prepare your response. Let's have a quick recap of what Robert Gagne and Jean Piaget have proposed. Under Robert Gagne, we have the theory states that learning of new concepts or skills depends upon the mastery of prerequisite concepts. Materials for learning must be sequentially and hierarchically ordered, structured. Teachers must state the objective for lessons, and also they should make high emphasis on pre-testing before introducing the new concept. And then under Jean Piaget, of course, Jean Piaget proposed 4 developmental stages, and they include the sensory motor stage, the pre-operational stage, concrete operational stage, and formal operational stage. Science teaching should commence from simple to complex, and emphasis on problem solving and not memorization should be noted. And lastly, learning must be consistent with child's mental capacity. Yeah, we are going to end the class here today. Until we meet in the next class, go over the video very well, take your notes, and have a wonderful period. Until we meet again, bye for now.